David Sasu, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, thank you.
So, artificial intelligence is the building of computer systems that are capable of solving tasks that naturally would require human intelligence to solve. And within that subfield, we have natural language processing, which has been a key catalyst in terms of building the AI systems that the general public has become accustomed to, the chat GPTs and the translation systems, etc.
Yeah.
You are a natural language processing expert, a recent graduate in your PhD program within this particular domain.
Yes.
Kindly walk us through your journey in becoming a natural language processing expert, and then we can get to speak about the specific research area that you've been investigating.
Okay. Thank you so much for welcoming me to this very cool podcast that I have over here. So with respect to my journey into natural language processing, it all started from a class that I took in my junior year at Ashesi. So before natural language processing, I remember taking a machine learning class. And that machine learning class was my first baptism into the field of artificial intelligence. Prior to that, I hadn't taken any artificial intelligence class. So getting exposed to all of the different algorithms and paradigms through that machine learning class was really eye-opening. And it's really made me understand that there was a world beyond traditional software engineering in computer science, right? So fast forward, I took my natural language processing class, and I really loved it. I loved all of the different ideas within the subject matter. And I also really loved the potential that you could explore within this particular field of interest. So I remember doing my undergraduate thesis in natural language processing, where for my thesis, I focused on building a speech system that is able to identify songs in Akan, which is the Ghanaian local language.
Oh, wow.
And I think at that time was the first functional NLP system in Akan. That was way back in 2019. So that was quite interesting. And working on that project really served as the launchpad to get me into mainstream natural language processing. I was able to publish that work, and that publication served as my entry into my PhD program. So I started my PhD in 2020, where the focus of my PhD was to figure out how to build these natural language processing systems for low resource languages with the particular focus on speech processing. So during my PhD, I've been incredibly blessed to be able to work on all of these different facets of speech processing with regards to natural language processing. And that has been interesting so far.
After your research work, you're also now working with EPFL. Would you care to walk us through what you're currently working on at EPFL?
So at EPFL, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the School of Computer Science, and I also double as the technology director for the Laboratory of Intelligent Global Health and Humanitarian Response Technologies. So this is a lab that focuses on building and deploying AI tools at scale for global health and humanitarian use cases.
And in your work at EPFL, what are some of the interesting projects that you're currently working on?
Yes, so at the lab, which is Light within EPFL, we work on a variety of very cool things. One of the projects that I'm currently working on is building a legal-focused large language model for the International Commission of the Red Cross. So the idea is to build a large language model that can help with legal case reasoning. So that's an incredibly interesting project. Another one that I'm currently working on is a project that is figuring out how to embed humanitarian values into large language model outputs. Because if you look at the current large language models that we have, if you were to ask a question that would require some kind of internal debate with respect to values, right, within a human being, you don't necessarily get the same behavior replicated in the large language models that we have currently. So if you were to ask it a question, it would just, run off and start spitting out responses without necessarily having to think through its principles and its values with respect to, in this case, the humanitarian domain. So this project is figuring out how do we embed these values within large language models during their development phase, so that when you ask it a question, it is able to figure out how to give you the best possible response that is in line with the values that we have indoctrinated it with. So that's also another interesting project that I'm working on. And finally, I'll talk about the final project and that I'm involved with, which is building a conversational speech model for medicine, which is definitely within my wheelhouse. So it's figuring out how to build these conversational speech systems that different people can interact with in their own language to be able to get access to credible medical information. Yes.
That's really inspiring work, and I can imagine how you're balancing that with also your work that I know that you're doing at Ashesi. Just so that you have a course that you'll be offering that I hope to take. How does your Ashesi role also play into your current work?
Yes. So at Ashesi, I am currently an Achaconfield Fellow, which means that I am at Ashesi as a visiting lecturer and also a researcher. So for this semester, I'm currently teaching computer vision, where the idea is to figure out how to deploy these recent deep learning models to solve certain common vision tasks, such as classification or prediction. That's what I focus on in my role here at Ashesi. I mean, of course, in addition to teaching, I've also been doing a lot of research where I am currently focusing on how to deploy AI at scale to help tackle non-communicable diseases. So that's also another project that I'm working on over here as a researcher at Ashesi.
That seems like a very interesting journey, and I can see the flow from your undergrad all the way through to your PhD. You say something very interesting there. You made mention of focusing on natural language processing, particularly for low resource languages. Do you care to explain why that is important?
Yeah, so as at 2019, there was this big revolution going on in language processing, where a lot more people were having interest in how to apply the recently published deep learning algorithms at that particular point in time to perform different tasks for languages. And it turns out that most of the languages that people were interested in back then were the languages that you would see on the internet. So they are the typical suspects of English, French, Spanish, basically European and other Western languages, that were being attended to when these systems were being built. An example would be to think about all of the popular speech assistants that you can think of previously, and I think even currently, the languages that they are able to operate in would be languages that fall within the specific domain. So nobody was really focusing on, at least at that time, on languages that were being spoken in other parts of the world, specifically Africa. So as at that time, there were tons of African languages that were not necessarily represented. So a low resource language essentially is a language for which there isn't a lot of linguistic data available to be used in building natural language processing systems for those languages. And at that particular period of time, most of the African languages didn't have a lot of linguistic data available that could be used to develop systems for them. So they were all classified under the banner of low resource languages. So that's essentially what a low resource language is. You don't have a lot of data on it, and there's also not that much research interest going into it. So those are the two
And then someone would possibly ask, okay, so we have African languages not represented, but we have English and we have Mandarin and Spanish, etc. What particular disadvantage would that have for an African if their language is not represented? They could always use whatever is already available. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, what I would say is that if you look at the literacy rate on the continent, it's not everybody who is able to have access to a formal education and learn how to speak the major languages around the world. So not everybody, specifically on the African continent, can speak and read English. And it's not everyone that can speak and read French or any of the other major languages. So as a result of that, such a person is really locked out of all of the world's information, and they can't get access to certain services, or they can't even get access to certain life-changing information because of this barrier that has been created as a result of the languages that they do not know how to speak.
So it makes focusing on natural language processing and particularly representation of African languages within the NLP ecosystem makes AI systems more accessible to the general public.
Exactly. Because even with regards to making it accessible, that's why in my current field of research interest, I focus more on speech models. Because even though these days there have been a lot of efforts in building natural language processing systems to adopt African languages, most of it is still text-based. And there aren't that many Africans who can read the language that they speak, right? So it's very important to have systems that are able to meet people where they are in terms of their own reality. Most people are able to converse fluently in the language of their birth, and technology should be designed to meet these people at a particular point of reality, right? Rather than, create these other barriers, even though it may look as if you're solving the problem, but you're introducing this other layer of complexity, which is not being considerate of the actual reality on the ground. Yes.
And I think that's such a powerful point. Having the technology get to meet the people where they are. And of course, knowing that, for example, within many African countries, the oral form of speaking is more dominant as opposed to other parts of the world. But you made mention of something there that I really now want us to dive into, your primary research area. And you have been speaking about going across barriers. In a nutshell, I think you expressed to me that you're working on emotionally intelligent, multilingual AI systems. What are these types of systems? And could you walk us through that?
Okay. So if you look at two people having a conversation like we are having, there is so much embedded within our exchange that is not adequately represented in just the text, the transcripts of this conversation, or even just the words alone. There are all of these emotional cues that we are exchanging that is helping us to have a much broader understanding or appreciation of this conversation that we are having, right? And if you look at the current AI systems, we've gotten to the day and the age where we are able to have these incredibly smart, incredibly emotionally intelligent systems that work well for English and other major languages, right? You won't find a really lifelike, emotionally intelligent system for a local language currently. So what I'm focused on in my research is figuring out how to build these same conversational speech agents that are able to understand emotional cues, that are able to obviously converse in the local languages, and are able to interact fluently with a person who speaks a dialect of a local language or who speaks a particular local language. That's what I'm focused on.
Okay. This is amazing, and it only kind of brings my mind. I know you made mention there of the emotional cues that are part of the conversation, and there was a word that I've been trying to make sure that I get it right. It's called prosody.
Yes.
And particularly, you are an expert as well in terms of gaining prosody cues from speech. Would you care to explain what is prosody and how does it factor into these systems?
Yes. So prosody, thank you for bringing that up. When you are talking, you are making certain emphasis with your tonation that help to stress on certain ideas that you believe are important that I should focus on to help me to correctly answer the question that you just asked, right? The characteristics of your auditory expression to make that happen is what is referred to as prosody. So in a nutshell, it is all of these paralinguistic characteristics of your speech that aid in communication. So the emphasis, the tone of your voice, the pitch with which you speak, all of these tiny things, if we were to write down what you are saying, we won't necessarily indicate that, oh, okay, you made an emphasis on the word prosody, or you made an emphasis on the word is. But all of these different sorts of characteristics, auditory characteristics, they are important in communication because they don't just allow the person that you are talking to figure out what is most important and aid in their meaning, but it may even help them to even understand your state of mind or the state of your emotion, right? So if you're angry, you might ask the question in a particular kind of way. Or if you're being sarcastic, you may ask the question in a particular kind of way. Prosody is that characteristic that would help somebody who is listening to you to be able to decode all of that information that you may not be explicitly saying. So that's essentially what prosody is.
So this was lesson 101 for me, and I'll just try to see if I've gotten a good understanding of what prosody is. So if I say, you ate an apple.
Yes.
And if I say, you ate an apple.
Yes.
That would be an example of
exactly.
prosody.
So that inflection in your tonation changes the interpretation of what you just said. Okay. Yes. And you realize that it's incredibly important to gift machines with this kind of appreciation for prosodic cues, because imagine if you had a system that is able to understand all of these inflections in the tonation. It helps these systems to be able to have a more natural conversation with the person that they're interacting with. And that is where we would want to get to with these intelligent conversational systems. We would want to get to systems that are able to have fluid human-like communication with us, right? We would want to escape this uncanny valley of human AI conversation. That sounds like you're having a conversation with a robotic system, and then get to this point where you won't be able to tell the difference between if you're having a conversation with another human being or if you're having a conversation with a computing system. And I'll tell you why that's important. That's important because in particular kinds of domains where there is such a demand for interaction, but then there is such a limited supply of the people that can give that interaction, these systems can fill in the gaps. So if you think about things like humanitarian response, or if you think about things like healthcare, or if you think about things like even triaging, right, of healthcare, there are a lot of people who may want to have access to these kinds of services, but there is such an overwhelming shortage in the supply of people who can give them. So if we're able to build systems that are multilingual, but are also emotionally intelligent and fluid in their conversation, they would be able to step in and fill in the gaps and then help meet the demand that has been created. Yeah.
And I think you also have just opened the door again into one of the key things that I think you're particularly passionate about, which is the application of these AI systems and emotionally intelligent conversational systems within humanitarian situations and help. Yeah. Why is that important to you, and what could be the delta of using AI systems within these domains?
Yes. So I'll give you a quick example of why focusing on healthcare and humanitarian response is important, particularly when it comes to these kinds of systems. So think about a particular application like health information seeking, right? There are lots of people currently who may not necessarily be literate, who are currently taking wrong decisions as a result of misinformation that they have been fed. So the typical example is when the COVID outbreak happened, there was so much different information going on, right?
Yeah.
And just imagine if you're somebody who does not know how to read, you are at the mercy of what you are hearing from people telling you. You would not necessarily have the capacity to go and seek for information to help you to distinguish between what is fact and what is fiction. So if we had multilingual conversational systems that are able to speak our local languages that existed, imagine the situation where you could have somebody who could call an intelligence system and then ask if a particular information is true or false with regards to this particular kind of healthcare situation. And then imagine a situation where that system would be able to tell them definitively whether a particular information that they have been told is true or false. It could make a difference in how they even decide to approach their healthcare choices, right? So it's really important, especially when you're thinking about public health situations, to have systems like this that are able to help people to be able to make the right decisions. And even putting healthcare aside, when it comes to humanitarian response, when there is conflict happening in a particular area, there is the limitation of information that people can access, right? So if you are able to have these systems that people can rely on to figure out what is going on, right? And you have these systems that are able to reassure people in those particular seasons of uncertainty, it becomes something that is truly useful, right? So that is why I'm really passionate about the application of these systems within these particular kinds of domains, because it has such a wide-reaching impact, when they are deployed in these particular kinds of situations.
It saves actual human lives.
Yes.
It could be the difference between saving a life or losing a life.
Yes.
So there's probably someone who's listening to us right now and is inspired by your journey, what you're working on. They're intellectually curious and they've learned so much from what you have shared with us. And they are asking themselves the simple question, how do I get to move from where I am now to where David Sasu is, which is really the boundary of the discipline? What kind of advice would you give to that person, a young budding researcher?
Yes. So what I would tell that person is to really embrace their curiosity and to really try to leverage all of the tools that we have currently to soak up as much information as possible. I mean, we live in a world where the barriers to accessing knowledge has never been lower. It is incredibly easy these days to leverage all of these large language models that we have to meet you where you are in terms of the gap in your knowledge. You can prompt a large language model to explain something to you at your level until you get it. It's a wonderful technology. So if somebody would want to get from where they are in terms of their knowledge and capabilities to where I am, it's just a matter of building up their knowledge and their skill set. So their knowledge they can build by delving deeply into the literature on the topic. These days, as I was talking about, leveraging these large language models, you can really understand anything by deploying these systems to help you. And in terms of skill set, it's just a matter of picking a particular important problem and then deploying your knowledge to try to solve it in whichever way you can. And as you do that, you would definitely be able to learn a lot of practical things that you can leverage on to tackle bigger projects as you move along on your own journey. That's just what I'll tell them.
And I think this would be a natural follow-up. Assuming they take this path, what potential career opportunities could open up for them as a consequence of following this journey of either AI research, NLP research, or specifically emotionally intelligent conversational AI systems?
Well, there is really no limitation to what someone would be able to do with a skill set. I mean, my path followed from undergrad to graduate school and then to postdoctoral research, where I'm currently at EPFL. And I'm also working as the technology director of a lab that's focused on intelligent global health. That was my path. But that doesn't necessarily have to be another person's path who is learning all of this information. With this knowledge, there is really no limit to what someone can do. You can become an entrepreneur and solve a particular kind of problem that's of interest to you. You can become a researcher and then focus on solving a particular kind of problem within the field that hasn't yet been solved, of which there are many. You can become an engineer and then focus on how to build and deploy these systems at scale. You can also become a writer, where you focus on writing about these specific topics in a way that is easily accessible to people. You can become a speaker, where you speak on these particular kinds of issues. So I would say that any person who takes it upon themselves to really learn, their future is really limitless. And the thing that would define where they end up is really what they're interested in and what they decide to focus on.
So you said something that was really impactful within your bio, and I'm just going to read that to you as the closing part of this podcast. You said, by placing culture and prosody at the center of speech technology, we can create conversational agents that do more than just process commands. Agents that can listen with empathy, adapt with respect, and offer support where it matters most. David Sasu, it's been such a pleasure having you with us.
The pleasure is all mine, and thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.